I was actually sucked to the bottom of the rapid and held down. And I went through the entire rapid, pushed and on the ground, on the bottom of the river. And there was nothing I could do. You know, I'm swimming as hard as I can, looking up and just being pushed down.
This is Andrew Vance, and you're listening to Choose the Hard Way, where my guests share stories about how doing hard things builds stronger, more resilient people. If you enjoy this episode, please give it a 5-star rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Subscribe and forward it to a friend who likes doing hard things. If you want to suggest a guest or be in touch, you can reach me at choosethehardway@gmail.com or at hardwaypod on Twitter or Instagram. Lynsey Dyer is a legendary big mountain skier, filmmaker, photographer, activist, and mom. She's the founder of Unicorn Picnic and the host of Showing Up, a great podcast about people who seek to live beyond limits. I've been lucky enough to be a guest on Showing Up, and I highly recommend you check it out. Lynsey's nonprofit, She Jumps, opens the door for more girls and women to unearth potential through outdoor play, and as you'll hear in this interview, she continues to expand the scope of her activism. I really enjoyed this conversation and the ways Lynsey invites us to explore the power of fun and the alchemy of community when we're in pursuit of going big. You can find Lynsey at Lynsey Dyer on Instagram and learn more about all of her projects, including She Jumps, Unicorn Picnic, and the Showing Up podcast at lynseyDyer.com. And as always, you can find those links in the show notes.
Dean Potter was the main reason I wanted to start a podcast. And that was because he and so many of the athletes, not all, but so many of the athletes that I've been so lucky to encounter in this existence really are magicians. They really are some of the most special humans, the way they look at the world. But he was exceptional and also struggled, you know, a lot. He really didn't fit in, and he was special. And I had seen so many journalists, and you know, he was this huge name. And if you haven't heard of him, he was a climber, one of like the first free solo guy, and then he took things to the next level and started base jumping off of everything. And he didn't quite fit in his world. He lived in the mountains. He's just the real thing. And the first time I ever got to really get to know him was in Yosemite. I was on a shoot with Jimmy, and we were trying to capture base jumping off of Half Dome, and it's illegal. And so there was a lot of pressure. Jimmy was under a lot of pressure. I was sort of there just for support. And so we were waiting for sunset, trying not to get caught by the what do they call it? The Rangers. And, these 4 guys were going to launch off this thing at sunset. And Dean was kind of the mastermind, the leader, and all the other ones were younger and kind of looking up to him. And Jimmy and his team were pretty stressed. They're trying to get all this stuff done. And I'm trying to just be supportive in the background. And they all go like hang and rappel off the ledges and get in their positions. And I was just left up with these guys up on the top. And I like secretly pulled out a second camera out of Jimmy's pack and kind of got settled on this ledge. Also, again, just trying to stay calm for these guys. And I had this really special moment with this crew without speaking, especially Dean, where he could kind of see what was going on and that I was going to get this amazing photo of them sending it off this rock face. And yeah, just this, we didn't talk a lot, but enough where I just understood him and vice versa. And I remember just being like, I wish people could really get to hear his voice and get to hear his philosophy Because like we were seeing all kinds of movies and whatnot about him, but they weren't capturing his true essence. And you totally understand this. And something about a voice really captures the essence of someone. And so I had always had, I'd been listening to Rich Roll and a handful of these guys that started all this up initially. And it was my intention to have Dean be my the first person I interviewed. And then we lost him. And I was so crushed that to me, that the essence of him and what he had to share and the way he looked at the world and the way he pushed boundaries, it hadn't truly been captured. And I was like, I'm never going to let that happen again. Because there are so many of these magical humans that they're not meant to be here forever. And if we can really see them and help bring their voice out while they're here, that to me is a huge, does the world a service. And so, yeah, I think of Dean Potter every time I come across these unicorns in my, in this walk, and I feel like feel a responsibility to try and help pull out who they really are, so the rest of us can learn from them.
In some way, the people that we see the most or that are the most present in culture, particularly people who are visually present and doing really spectacular things, in some ways, they're the people we understand the least.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like you said, like you're used to getting the same questions over and over. You're used to your answer that they want to hear. That's the soundbite or whatever. And it's not often that someone really sees you and really wants to dig in. And so, yeah, I appreciate it. And I wish I'd started just a little bit earlier.
Where has the experience of having your podcast taken you? And have you gone into territory that's different? Has it delivered anything other than what you expected from getting out of it when you started?
I think every single time in the interview, the thing about why I pursued skiing I didn't intentionally pursue skiing as a career, but it ended up being that I just wanted to put all my time into it. And it's sort of the same with podcasting. I didn't expect it to, I would love for it to take care of me financially, but it's the doing the thing that gives me so much reward. So I would say every interview takes me in a place, and the guests I'm with in a place I didn't expect. And there's some sort of transformative, healing, fun, magic moment in every time. And I feel like that also comes across for the guests, the people listening. You feel like you're part of that conversation. And in this time where we're so disconnected, I think it's a real service. But I'm not sure if that's answering the question the way you wanted.
No, I don't have any expectation of what your answer might be or where it would take us. I'm just curious what your experience has been.
Yeah, I'd say every interview takes me to one of those places that only like a real connection can, right? And that was another motivation for starting it. But then also it kind of gets you in the door for people that would never otherwise give you the time of day. I got to interview the Secretary of the Interior, and we got to talk about childhood fun stories in the outdoors that she probably never would have had that conversation with me otherwise. So there's been a lot of different ways that it's been super rewarding.
Has it shifted the way that you see yourself at all?
Has it shifted the way? Not necessarily. I think in general, it was just like the very first time I ever was given the opportunity to interview someone. I was hosting a TV show for Outside also at Mountain Film. And I got to interview and sit down with Chris Sharma. And that first time, it made me feel like, wow, this is something I really, really want to do. It was that same sort of feeling where this guy's been interviewed a million times, but not by necessarily another athlete. And I could really ask him the questions that I wrestle with all the time, and hear things that I've never heard out of another, athlete.
What do you want to do with the podcast that you haven't done yet in terms of guests or format? Is there anything that you want to experiment with that you just haven't had the time or resources or opportunity to do?
Yeah, I would just love to take it to the next level. I think we all kind of looked at Joe Rogan like, oh, he's the man. I'd love to do what he's doing and really just get to focus on it and take it to a large audience that I know could benefit from it. When you're doing everything on your own, it's hard to get the word out there. It's hard to keep the production quality high. Mine started off really high quality production value, and then keeping that up and paying editors and music and sound was really difficult. And so now my production level has gone down tremendously. I don't edit anything anymore, but at least I'm able to sustain it and keep it going. So yeah, the dream would be to get it out there to a big audience and do this for real. Like I joke with friends like, yeah, I want to be the Baba Wawa of the outdoor industry in terms of, in-depth interviews that matter.
Yeah, I really enjoy your show. As I mentioned, I checked out many different episodes before we got together today, and I think it's awesome. So everybody should definitely go check it out. The link is in the show notes. And something that you've always done is you're always evolving your career. You're always pushing yourself into new and different places, but always, it seems, in service of kind of the same overall mission. Do you feel that your mission is still moving in the same direction, or do you have different aspirations at this point in your career?
I think, yeah, the mission has always stayed the same. And it's the one biggest truth in my life that I've never questioned. So many other things, belief systems or like paths, I can see the other side of them. And that's just that it's always better outside, no matter what. Going outside, getting fresh air, moving my body, like always delivers. And I think if I can share that one message with more people, then it'll do a service. And so it's all the ways that you could potentially inspire people to go outside, especially with all of the struggles there are in the world today. It doesn't cost anything to go outside, no matter where you are. Get some sunshine, take a deep breath. And it just always helps me reset. And so, yeah, it's just all the ways that we could deliver that.
And for you, just getting outside, you've done it in some really big, spectacular ways, but that's not always possible in everyone's life. And it's probably not always possible in your life, right? So what is just getting outside and getting that reset, what does that look like for you at this point in your trajectory?
Well, right now, I just had a baby 3 weeks ago.
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. So getting outside right now means stepping out onto the deck and breathing fresh air, like taking my shoes off and walking in the grass and just feeling the sunshine on my back. And the pregnancy was tough in terms of not being able to be as active as I like to be. And so having these moments of recovery and just like I said, gosh, just feeling the sunshine on my back, it's magic, and that's as good as it gets. So that's what being outside looks like to me. But you're right. Like, in order to sort of make it in this world, I had to do some pretty big things, and those things actually showed me how capable we are of so much more than we thought. And I'm grateful for those too.
And, kind of as you described with that experience with Dean Potter and those other athletes in that moment, when you were there, you both have been out there, you've been in front of the camera, you've done things that absolutely blow people's minds. They've helped shift the dynamic within the world of outdoor and action sports. You've opened the door for women in a really amazing and powerful way. You've made it your mission to inspire and motivate young women in general, to get more women into the outdoor space. And you also have, you've been on the other side of that, and you've been witness to people doing amazing and powerful things. And I thought something that you mentioned about Dean, and I think that, people who do exceptional things are often exceptional in all kinds of different ways, and they're also often misunderstood, or maybe the average person might not connect to them in the same way. How does that difference show up? And the thing that enables people to do really spectacular things can kind of set them apart also from just like day-to-day life. What is it like to be able to touch these almost they're not superhuman things, but they're these things that are just like at the absolute limit. And then to go back into ordinary life and I've got to make dinner tonight, or, it's stuff like that. Is that transition hard?
For sure. And I think sometimes it's easy to get to deify, those that go on these big, crazy expeditions. And I think the real heroes in our world are the parents that are, like you said, showing up and making dinner every night, just being there. And you don't get awards for that sort of thing, but those are the magic makers in our world. And yeah, I think it's way easier to go be on a fancy expedition where your single focus is this out of this world thing that you get all kinds of praise for. Real life is a lot harder than that. And there's gray zones, and there's no specific, goals to attain that make it really hard. And I watched that growing up, seeing my parents go to multiple jobs every day and being like, gosh, I don't want to go that way. I don't want to struggle. I don't want to be an adult. And now being in that position and recognizing that's where the real heroes are. Creating that stability for a kid is the hardest thing and the most important thing.
Yeah. And again, kind of taking a look at what you did and have done in your career as an athlete, in order to do these big, spectacular things that blew people's minds, keep blowing people's minds, years, decades of really meticulous attention to detail and preparation go into making something look easy for 15 to 30 seconds. And I know you've talked a lot about what you did in the big mountain ski film kind of domain, and I can probably drop links to other podcasts where you've talked about that in the show notes. But something that's really interesting to me is, back when you were going to go ski a line in a TGR movie or a Warren Miller movie, whatever the case may be, how much preparation went into, and like, what was the process like for, I'm going to do this line, figuring out like what day you might be able to do it on, and then being prepared when that moment came to actually execute?
Yeah, well, I'm not speaking for everyone, because a lot of athletes are able to on-site something and then go do it. And that is not my way. That's amazing. For me, the big stuff that is notable took, 3-4 years to plan and to research and to memorize every rock and bush on a face so that I would know where I was from the top. Because for a ski line, if things are steep enough meaning good enough to be in a ski movie, there's a good chance you can't really see actually a turn or two in front of you. And so you have to somehow memorize where you are on a mountain, and scale and understanding where all that is it's virtually impossible. And some people just have it and some people don't. I don't have it. And so I had to really study, really memorize, and then wait for the conditions to be good too. There's a lot of athletes that are willing to push it and test, every year the conditions are more challenging with global warming and making it more and more dangerous. So, I said no a lot of times before. Well, in thinking again of the specific stuff that I did, I got my butt handed to me a couple times before I was able to actually pull the big stuff off.
And when your butt would get handed to you, when did that become something you saw as an opportunity versus something you saw as a stop sign? Because sometimes we run into things and it's actually a sign that, like, yeah, it's time to stop this. The level of risk might be too high. It could even, it could be bad, right?
Yeah. I guess the specific one that I'm talking about was this big cliff off the backside of Jackson Hole. And the first time I went up to ski it, what I mean by getting my ass kicked was that the whole mountain came down in an avalanche and my friend was in it. And that was a big stop sign. But for some reason I did go back up, once the mountain had reset. And it's because I double checked in with all the cells in my body and made sure that I was doing it for the right reasons and everything was on board. And I really was curious about pushing this limit and could we do this? And I think we could do this. You know what I mean? So it's kind of all checking in. And that's something I think you just kind of know inside or not. And it's like, why are you doing this? Is it for the Kodak courage? Is it because these big film guys are waiting and there's money in the line and all that? I've done things for that reason too. And I've gotten my ass kicked that way. I can't say, I still don't quite see those things as an opportunity because, they took, the bad decisions I meant, meaning like sitting after being injured for a year multiple times. Those are still pretty painful. I haven't quite seen them as an opportunity yet. But I can say that, learning the hard way pushed me in the direction that I'm going now. And it means that I've been doing it on my own way for a long time now, so that I'm not in those situations where I'm doing it for the wrong reasons or because somebody else told me to, or because somebody else's money was on the line or this sponsor or that, you know what I mean? So it might have been a slower trajectory. I might not have gotten, I'm still kind of small potatoes, but I'm still here. So that's the way I see it. I still have things I want to do and I'm still doing it.
What does that process of checking in look like? What did it look like then? And what does it look like now?
I think the cool thing about stepping up to really big, hard things is you really have to face your dark sides, your shadow, meaning, like I said, really looking into why am I doing this? What is this for? And because if there's anything hidden that that's not authentic, it's going to come up when you're standing either at the top or in hesitation. And so you have to look at it. I've heard this with a lot of base jumpers, actually. You really you have to face all your shit. And then once you do, and everything's on board, then nothing holds you back. And that's ultimate flow state at the highest level. And that's what we're here for. I mean, that's the thing that keeps me going. It's like performing at that high level on the edge of what humans are capable of or past it. For me, growing up, you'd hear so often like, well, women can't do that, or a female body isn't strong enough to handle that, or blah, blah, blah. And so you absorb those and you think that that's just the way it is. And so to be able to challenge those universal beliefs and shift them, that has been epic. But again, it comes with having to face all the things in between. Like, have you faced all the stuff that might be pushing you from the wrong places? And like you said, do you have that support system in place? It all has to come together, and it takes a lot. You can't do them all the time.
Is that just an internal monologue for you, or do you sit down and journal? Do you talk to coaches, mentors, friends? Is it a personal thing? Is it something that involves your tight circle of advisors?
My fiance would say sometimes I do. If I in the big things, I definitely check in with my oracles. Is what he calls them. I have kind of a handful of grandmothers or aunties, and a few men that I find myself going to when stuff really matters. Like, I checked in with all of them before this, the birth of my daughter, just making sure everything was in alignment. Is there anything I needed to face, so that this birth could be a magic one and not a traumatic birth. And, it was actually the same as when I'm preparing for something big in the outdoors. It's funny that I didn't think about that, but yeah, I do. I check in with some oracles, but really in the end, it comes down to feeling feeling in my body if I'm holding anything that I've been unwilling to see before. And then I check in with the oracles for sort of any reflections of things that I might not be aware of, that my ego is hiding from me, or my subconscious that I'm unaware of, so that the ultimate goal can happen.
How did these different oracles come into your life, and how did you select them to be the people who are your trusted advisors who you bounce ideas off of?
It's all intuition. It's kind of like knowing Dean Potter without talking to him. It's just, you just kind of feel it. You're the real deal, and I care what you have to say or feel. And I could call them white witches. They're just. Again, this pregnancy thing has really shown me how powerful divine feminine is, and maybe that and that's not a female male thing. That's in us all, and I don't have words, but it has to do with humility, and it is not limited to these bodies. It's a connection that we all have at some level, and none of these words are doing it any justice. Just feel it. I mean, some of them are spiritual intuitives, and they're outwardly they're spiritual intuitives, and people know them as that. And other times, before one of these big 75-foot cliff faces, that I worked with my best friend's mom, who is a therapist and a hypnotherapist. And she kind of took me into this relaxed state where I really could check in with all of my cells and make sure everything was on board to do this. And we were excited, and we were going to do this. And so that's an example of one of these helpers that has been a big part of making things happen. I did the same thing before this birth. Worked with her to create a place that I could go when and if things got really heavy in the birth process.
Yeah, this is one of the topics that really fascinates me, is the relationship that people have to their gut, their intuition, the manner in which it guides them, and what happens if they don't listen to that call. Mm. And, in a self-interested way, I think it's because I'm always examining what is my relationship to my intuition, and for better or worse. And because I think what you shared about your podcast at the beginning is quite interesting, because sometimes our intuition or gut might take us in the direction of attempting to do something, and it's going to take years before that thing comes to fruition or is fully realized in the way that you want it to be realized.
Or it's oh, that's ridiculous. That's impossible. Why is that idea coming to me? I can't do that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So once you feel that connection to your intuition, does it usually sustain over time, or do you ever have self-doubt?
Oh yeah. You doubt for a long ass time, right? It's that thing that keeps coming up. It's not so the first time, I saw this cliff, for example, I couldn't even see it, right? It was not an option. It literally took me a year to consider it, and then 3 years to start preparing for it. Does that make sense? So I think that's the biggest thing I was even thinking about in preparing for your podcast, in terms of doing hard things. The hardest part is to be willing to step up to these impossible things that your logical brain and all of your friends and all of your family and everything to be real would support, in saying that, yeah, you could do that. When we're so bombarded with all the things we can't do, and the bullies and the people the haters, that are both internal and external, telling us that we can't. And for the most part, we listen to that. And I think often we're kind of surprised when we step up to something big, that you actually might not just not fail. You might actually succeed at these things that most you would assume were impossible.
And for you, having lived so much of your life in the public sphere, there are a lot of, I think the general perception an observer would have is like, oh, that's really great. Like you have a certain level of celebrity, you're getting to do cool things, you're doing things both on the creative side as well as an athlete that blow people's minds that they can't imagine doing themselves.
Right.
But what are the challenges of being in that public space? Because you're under a lot of scrutiny, and it affords you a lot of privilege and latitude, certainly, but also it can't be easy, I wouldn't think.
Oh yeah, especially these days. The past 4 years have been brutal with just the way social media can treat you and how personal. I know I take all the hate. It's so easy to throw that around these days. But I guess my whole life I've been facing, long before I had a name, I dealt with so much bullying growing up that, that's where some of the biggest struggle was. And also recognizing that you can let that rule your life, or you can go be who you're going to be, and having to make that choice, even though it's not, there's in no way, at least for me, that I don't feel the attacks or the disapproval or the, I've done a TED talk once on the way women struggle with perfection, and from a young age, why we don't take as many risks as our male counterparts. And it all has to do, you didn't ask about this, but chemicals that make us want people's approval, where men in the same situation, again, back to chemicals, are learning at a young age that it's okay to screw up over and over and over and keep going. From sitting in a classroom and getting in trouble all day long when you're 5 and 6 as a little boy, because you can't sit still because you're driven by testosterone, as where a young girl in that same situation is being praised for being good and perfect and meeting the teacher's approval. And so always looking for that approval outside. And if you don't get that, it is devastating. And so really consciously kind of looking at that and trying to challenge that, but also just in the end, kind of facing your own mortality and recognizing that we are not going to be here forever. So what is it that keeps coming up over and over as that idea of like, what if those, you called it intuition. And I think that could be, that's intuition, that's spirit, that's your soul telling you that this curiosity that you have is worth pursuing. And for as much time as your rational brain tells you it's impossible and that's too hard, and that's for richer people, prettier people, you know what I mean? There's a reason why it's coming up over and over. And I think those are the things that end up getting done, at least for me. Is like, I've thought about that cliff for so long, it's calling, or it's something I'm supposed to do, or that art project, or that business idea. And I think we all have that stuff. And it's just, if people like you and I can be that squeaky wheel in someone else's head to say, hey, there's a reason that stuff is coming up for you, those curiosities, go for it, because you only live once, as far as we know. And don't go to the grave, with your music still in you.
What aspects of who you are and what you have done and all of the media that you've done and all the podcasts you yourself have created haven't come up? What would you like to be asked about that people just end up not asking you about?
Oh man, I wish I knew that question before, because I would really think about it. I think something I've struggled with and really wanted is just to be seen for who I actually am, instead of the label or the idea that someone makes of me from a picture in a magazine or some other label. I recognize that I've had to kind of step into these roles. For me, it's been extreme skiing, right? That's a box I've attempted to fit into. And so that comes with a lot of labels and a lot of ideas about what that means. And it's not necessarily who I am. It's kind of helped me make a career. But, you know, whether it's been in relationships or, just in general, people put labels on you. Right. And, I've been praying literally to like be seen for who I actually am and to not have to change myself to sort of fit or to be accepted or, and it's so cool because this little being came into the world a couple of weeks ago, and I finally feel like I am just who somebody needs me to be, like one person in the world versus, man, in the last year or 2 years, I've been told, you know, sponsor wise, like I'm not modelly enough to get this sponsor. I don't have enough followers to get supported this way. I'm not hardcore enough to get this other sponsor, you know, so, and then in personal relationships, you know, like, oh, well, you know, well, I need a real woman, not a girl, you know, you hear these things throughout your life and you try so hard to fit into what other people need. And, what a dream it would be to just be seen for who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. And when you think about, because part of your background is in design, and so you're an artist, you're also a high level athlete, and you work in a lot of different mediums. So how do you see the relationship between physicality, what we can do with our bodies, and the production of art? I think that this is a really interesting dynamic, and you see it a lot in skateboarding, you see it in different action sports. I don't know, like, what is that relationship like for you?
You have the best questions. Thank you so much. This is so nourishing. I so appreciate good questions. Yum. Yeah, art and our bodies and nature. That's definitely the motivation, is like, it's so beautiful to be with and in nature. And then that challenge of bringing your own style and your own, like, how are you going to interact with that in a meaningful, like, in magic. Again, there's like no words. I use magic a lot, and it still is like, meh, not the best word. Help me out, like journalist guy. But like on a mountain, you can see where she wants a turn, you know, that goes with the landscape, and to be able to pull that off as an athlete and not fall off the cliff that's right below the turn is the challenge, right? Can you pull that off? And create that image. You know, you hear it, like you said, in skateboarding, well, he has good style, or she has good style. Like, you know, it takes a lot to get that aesthetic style that actually looks good. And like you said, makes something look easy. That could take 15, 20 years to get to that spot. But especially when you're like, oh yeah, I'm ripping right now. I look just like Travis Rice out here. And then you see a video of yourself and you're like, oh wow, I have a lot of work to do. But that feeling of like, I must be killing it is just fun, right?
Yeah. I mean, this is just my interpretation of what you have put into the world, but part of what I see, and I would of course love to hear your point of view because you're living it, but I feel like there's some kind of relationship between when you've attained a certain level of physical ability in a discipline like big mountain skiing. Part of what you're doing is you have a level of precision and rigor that allows you to recognize different patterns than a normal person is going to recognize and train, for example. So you can experience a mountain in a different way, and like we can watch you do that, but in the process of doing that, you're experiencing a different way of seeing. And I wonder if part of what comes out in the art and designs that you create might be from that unique point of view that you have. And I don't know, I'm just like throwing out a hypothesis here, but I'm wondering if that's maybe part of what happens. Maybe that's part of the synthesis or magic of what you create.
Yeah, for sure. I think no matter what, the more you look at something, the more you spend time in an environment. And ultimately, what I can actually say for certain is the more you love something, it truly does open up to you in a way that it hasn't before, or it doesn't to other people. And I can vouch for that in a profound way. The more times I've been in the mountains in a like ultimately grateful space, I swear the mountain opens up and talks to me in ways that it didn't before. Or if I was scared or intimidated or felt separate from it, I don't know how to explain that. But again, I've been calling it flow state because it doesn't happen that often, and it takes years to train and to be able to be comfortable and in that ultimately grateful space in these natural environments for things to open up and become easy. And to see, opportunities, or to see the line that might just terrify you otherwise. There's something to that for sure. And that's the only way I could explain it, is like ultimate gratitude for the opportunity to be there. And all that comes because you worked so hard to try and pull it off. And maybe you didn't pull it off so many times before, that when it is granted to you and that it all lines up and the conditions are there and the support crew is there and you actually have enough money to get out there and a healthy body, and you are in such gratitude because of how hard it was, that it can open up and grant you these like portals of epic bliss. Magic, flow. I don't know.
Does anything touch the level of flow that you experienced on big mountains with other projects that you've done?
I never imagined I would say this, but having a child has blown all that out of the water times 2 million, which is so hard to believe. It's all cliche what they say. Again, the words don't capture it. The amount of expansion I can say I have experienced from this little being that I used to, I had adopted the idea that kids were maybe not for me, or, limiting, or you give up your life. And, I think we hear so much of this, especially for women. If your career is important to you, then you might not do that. And I'm so glad that I didn't miss out on this, because she has given me just so much more than I ever could have imagined. And I'm so glad that I was wrong.
And, with your gift being a relatively new arrival, as you step back into doing other things like this podcast, for example, or you think about what you're going to do with your podcast in the future or other projects, have you felt shifts with what you feel yourself drawn to at all?
I don't necessarily feel shifts to what I've been drawn to, but I just feel like I'm here more. Like she finally has given me that reflection, I think, that I needed of unconditional love to step more fully into all the things I always wanted to do and be. Like I said, the past 4 years, and I think a lot of us can relate, all my spiritual teachers say this, like we are in a transformative time. It started in 2017, 2018. Supposedly it goes till 2024, where people are leaving the planet like crazy, right? We've all lost loved ones, whether they're family or friends. We've seen that in a big way. Our environments are changing. There's a lot of reasons to be sad right now. There's a lot of loss. And I've been carrying a lot of grief and a lot of loss from losing a lot of things in my career, in my family, and my personal relationships. And I've been carrying all that. And somehow when she showed up in the world, I finally, you're trying to, you recognize that you're carrying it, but I wasn't letting it go. And I finally am feeling like I'm doing that. So I don't know if anyone can relate, but all that grief will be easier to let go in 2024, supposedly. Maybe now.
Coming soon. Yeah. And I guess at a practical level, or as you think about the different projects that interest you going forward, what's on your bucket list? Like, you've done so much. Like, you've done such amazing things as an athlete. You've been a filmmaker. You've been in front of the camera. You've been a host. You've done lots of TV related things. You've taken amazing photos. I honestly, like, I'm in total awe of what you've achieved as a human being. Like, what's in front of you that you still want to get into that you haven't started to even scratch the surface of potentially?
Yeah, it's funny. It's there's still those things that that have come up again and again that my logical brain has been like, no, you're not good enough yet, or you don't have enough money, you're not cool enough, all the things, right? But they still keep coming up, and the biggest one is protecting wildlife in a big way. When I was young, like very young, the first thing I ever wanted to do was protect the rainforest, the entire rainforest. You know, when you believe you can do anything, and then the world squashes you. That was a big one that I was like, yeah, there is no solution for this when I really looked at the problem. And so I've kind of taken that back in, and it's a lifetime goal now to see wildlife corridors from Mexico to up through Canada for our wildlife populations, that they were here first. And they are so often the reason why we are in nature, to hopefully catch a sight of them, and their food and habitat are all going away, as we know. And we need to do things to protect them. And that seems like a big, ominous, audacious, impossible goal. And I'm scared even talking about it, which sounds like everything I've ever done before. Like I wouldn't talk about it until it happened. But that's something that all these other learnings have shown. If I can do those things, why not? What's the next big goal? So that's one of them. And then the next thing is like, well, how am I going to pay for that? How am I going to make that happen? And taking some brands to the next level is kind of some ideas there, but still marinating on all that. And then there's a few more athletic pursuits that are still calling, that again, I don't really talk about things until till it's done.
Yeah, I totally get it. As you think about the wildlife corridor thing, and I understand you don't want to talk about something until it's maybe a bit more fully formed, but whether it's developing a wildlife corridor through all of North America, or hey, I'm going to become a filmmaker, or I'm going to launch a podcast, with all of these different projects
that you have no business being in, and no background and all.
Yeah, you totally have a reason to be in them, and they've created great outcomes all around. But at the beginning of those processes, every time you jump into something new, does it continue to feel scary, or do you draw confidence from the idea that, like, yeah, I've jumped into a lot of things that were adjacent to what I had been doing, and I learned what I needed to do. And as you jumped into that process, do you seek out experts to help accelerate your learning and expertise, or you just kind of find your way along?
All the things. The first question was like, is it still scary? And it is still so scary every moment. And that's what keeps me humble. I mean, even this pregnancy thing, it was very personal for me. And I guess maybe people think, oh, well, people do that all the time. That's not a big deal. And I woke up every day, you know, like with all the fears of, did I sleep wrong? Did I eat the wrong thing? And she's still with me, you know, like these scared thoughts that I had to face every day with all these other, you know, big athletic pursuits, and keep going. And I think that humility is important, because it does keep you kind of on track. And fear, I guess, is where I think it can be helpful. And then you said, do I seek out experts? And for sure, but not over the top. Like I'm always, you know, checking on my own intuition, or my own, like, does that feel right? Again, back to pregnancy, there's a gazillion books, and everyone's giving you all kinds of advice on what you should be doing or expecting. And all that's great to a point. And then to a point, you have to just rely back on your own intuition, I guess. Did that answer your questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to learn more about your experience. And I think one of these other areas that I'm really curious about, I was reflecting on this today, again, going back to this idea that, for me, having had the privilege of I've gotten to write about, I've gotten to be around a lot of world-class performers in all these different disciplines in the 25 years I've been a professional storyteller in a lot of different capacities. And the thing I've observed over and over, and this is kind of where we started the conversation, like to be exceptional, you're doing things that are not normal. They're new and different from what other people might do. At the same time, there might be something like a podcast, for example, which you've started a podcast. I've started a podcast. There are thousands of podcasts. But I think if you want to get into that space, your aspiration has to be, I've got to do something new and different. And then you kind of have to hope and have faith that people will connect to whatever your twist is on doing things.
And you just have to keep showing up. I think that's the biggest thing. That's why my podcast is called that, is like I've heard you say in your podcasts, it doesn't happen overnight. And in showing up again and again and again, that's where things shift, and those overnight successes have an opportunity to happen.
Have you ever jumped into something and it turned out it just was something that you didn't need to be doing, or it didn't work out and you had to abandon ship?
Probably. Off the top of my head, nothing's coming up, but yeah. Oh gosh. I've had to let go of really important things that I was like forced to let go of. Yeah, it's still like heartbreaking.
Do you want to say more about that?
I am unsure. Relationships, businesses that, that I put my heart and soul, like I thought were my child, like I said, relationships that I thought were the one, and then I was wrong. Ouch. I still feel it right now, even though I've done so much work to process these things and to practice letting go and to refocus on the things that I can control. But, all kinds of things. I've made a lot of mistakes too. I almost died in a river last year. So
what
not
happened?
All good things. I've really been getting into this river surfing stuff, and there's this wave that's outside of on the Snake River. It's only exists for about a month out of the summer right now, like 3 weeks. And it's right in the middle of a class 3 rapid. And it's gnarly. And first you have to get across the river. So you get on your surfboard and paddle as hard as you can to cross the river. So you're going through the rapid no matter what. And it is so intense and challenging. Like if you think waves pull you down in the ocean and hold you down, a river is, I'm not going to say next level, but it's terrifying. And you get pulled down in holes. Like I have to climb up my leash every single time because I get pulled down in a hole and then swept down the river that you're fighting so hard, where I've had to like climb back on being pushed to the opposite side of the river and had a 2-mile walk back. I can't explain how difficult this is. And so I'd been at this for 3-4 weeks, showing up every day, just getting my ass kicked, getting over and over, being churned in this class 2 rapid. So essentially you jump out, you try to catch this wave, you miss it, or I miss it. And then I'm pulled through class 3 rapids again and again and again, and then having to fight to get to the side, get back up, jump in again, and try one more time. That's what it looks like. So I'd been doing that for 3 weeks. I'd been missing the wave over and over. I was super frustrated. And I jump into water all the time, and I didn't really think about it. I took my life jacket off, and it was just like, just to finish out the day, I'm just going to just jump off this cliff for fun, because it's what I do. And so I jumped off this rock that people jump off all the time, but they have life jackets on. And I jumped out as hard as I could, all of my frustration. And I was actually sucked to the bottom of the rapid and held down And I went through the entire rapid, pushed and on the ground, on the bottom of the river. And there was nothing I could do. You know, I'm swimming as hard as I can, looking up and just being pushed down by the hydraulics of the rapid. And it was the first time where I was like, whoa, I am not in charge. And really had to practice all the breath work that I have done unexpectedly. You know, when you jump off a cliff into water, you pop right back up. So you kind of have that much air of what you're expecting. And I'd done it a million times. And this was different. I was held down for over a minute and ended up finally, the rapid kind of finally spit me out. I had to essentially stop fighting, go numb, and go like loose, and I got pushed through the bottom of the river, around rocks and all kinds of things. And then finally got spit out at the eddy under about 20 feet of water, and finally could swim back up. And everyone was freaking out on the side of the bank, and I had a real scare. And I guess what it showed me is just back to that humility, that there are times when you're not in charge. And I will certainly be teaching my kiddo deep breath holds in water for those times when we're not in charge. But yeah, I guess my point is, like, I have all these success stories, or those are the ones that are maybe more public, but I still get my ass kicked all the time.
What's fun about surfing in a river that made you want to go through that experience?
Finally catching it after just sucking for so long. I guess that's it, right? Is that reward? Well, I mean, if you watch people do it, it looks rad. It looks so fun to have this wave experience in the mountains. Yeah, who wouldn't want to surf one standing wave in the middle of a river? Because you can. And then also because it's so hard that if you could, boy, that would be rewarding. You know, there's something to that whole, it's got to be hard for that reward to be equally as insane. So I did eventually get it. And I also got a really good life preserver for the river.
Sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I would recommend that. Before learning the hard way.
Wow. That's really wild. Thanks for sharing that. So, Lynsey, is there anything we didn't get to that you'd like to talk about?
Oh man. There's so many things. I guess one of them is don't hit your head. You know, there's so much pressure we have to, like you said, to stand out and be rad, and like you got to do the next coolest, raddest, biggest thing. And I watch so many of our youth, specifically girls. Statistically, the head injuries for young girls, like 13 and on, they do serious damage, and no one really talks about them because there's still no real solutions. We've heard a couple of athletes in the half pipes being vocal about hitting their heads and how horrible that is. We've obviously lost Sarah Burke to that. But it's for real. I certainly can't hit my head anymore all the times. Like where you're just like sending because you want it. They add up, or soccer headers, or all kinds of things. So, yeah, I wish we could just, so many parents of girls ask me what can be done. And the trouble with hitting our heads is your brain just has to heal with sleep and omega-3s. It's literally like all we can do, which I went to so many professionals trying to seek help for this kind of stuff. And a lot of my friends are struggling silently. So, it's worth saying no to impressing the dude who just jumped off that. See if you can, you know what I mean? There's so many times when we do things for the wrong reasons. And so, yeah, don't hit your head. It's worth not hitting your head. What else? I know it's been really hard for guys lately, white men, men in general. And I just I see you. And I know there's a lot of good men out there that are struggling because there's a lot of shitty men out there that have done some gnarly bad things, and it's a time for other people to be seen. But sometimes tokenization is really unfair. And yeah, I'm just thankful for all the mentors and coaches and teachers that make the world go round, because they don't necessarily get the rewards that the people in the spotlight do, but they're the ones that empower those in the spotlight, and especially for kids. So I see you and I want to be like you. And it's so hard these days for a teacher, a mentor, to make it in the world. So those are my heroes: parents, teachers, mentors.
Mentors play such a critical role. And how do you find space in your life and with what you do? I mean, a lot of your programs, your nonprofit, or they're oriented around providing leadership, mentorship, helping to open the door, holding the door open for people, and getting them into the outdoors. But just in your personal life, with everything that you have going on, do you still find space to mentor people? And do you have any thoughts for people out there who may not have this as a practice in their life?
Yeah, I think finding meaning has always been really important to me. And I think that's been one of the reasons I started a nonprofit, and participate in volunteering. And I guess that's a message too, is if you're looking for meaning in your life, go volunteer around something you care about. And it will help. It will help. I really like working with a group here in town, the Coombs Foundation, who is bringing at-risk kids out into the outdoors here in Jackson. And there are groups wherever you are that are doing important work. Same with wildlife groups. And to me, that's the kind of stuff that it just gives meaning and purpose to all the other things you do.
Well, Lynsey, thanks for being here today. Thanks for showing up for this podcast. And if people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
My art website is called unicornpicnic.org, and I look forward to kind of bringing that to the next level. And then the Showing Up podcast, and yeah, on all the channels. So thank you so much for these really insightful questions, and I really appreciate the opportunity to share.
Thank you. It's been awesome to have you as a guest. Hey, this is Andrew. I just want to say thanks for listening to Choose the Hard Way. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, hit 5 stars wherever you listen, and leave a positive review. Go to choosethehardway.com to sign up for the newsletter, and share this episode with a friend who likes hearing stories about doing hard things. Thank you for listening.